Hello, I think it looks like we're going live here. Emilee is going to come on and we are going to have a quick little Pinterest Q&A. So, if you are watching and you didn't get a chance to comment with your question ahead of time, just know that you are welcome to add comments while you're watching. So if you're watching the replay, you can add a comment wherever you think of one. If you are coming in, you are welcome to just drop comments, ask us as we go. I think Emilee's here. Hold on. There. Hey. All right. I'm glad you're here.
All right, I had my phone all set up and I'm like, oh, the top of my head's cut off.
I just started and I was like, oh, the door is open. Hopefully the toddler doesn't start screaming, but if she does, I'll go shut it. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of in the same boat. My toddler actually is in the other room watching this show on Netflix called Trash Truck. It's actually really cute. I'm like, kind of a strange name, but it's a cute show. So like we're kind of in survival mode. Today our AC went out, so yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, it's been an interesting day, but we'll make it.
That's rough when that happens and it's just like so
Yes.
hopefully this is going to be relaxing for you and not stressful.
Yeah, no, I've been super excited. So, no, it'll be good.
And tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm Emilee Vales, and my business as well is called Emilee Vales. I have a small team, but I am a Pinterest marketing and ads strategist. So for my clients, I do both promoted and organic Pinterest management. And I'm super excited. I'm actually, next week, I will be launching my first ever course. And so it's really directed towards TPT sellers. But I made a post today and I mentioned that actually the strategies I'm teaching are just really good foundational strategies that can be applied across all niches. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. And I've been doing this. I will have had my business 3 years this summer, and I actually started in social media management and strategy, and then I kind of pivoted after a year. I was getting a little burnt out, and so that's how I kind of decided to try something else, and it was all history after there, after I started with Pinterest. So
Well, I'm glad you're here. And in case anybody is
yeah.
and came from Emilee's audience, you don't know who I am. My name is Ashley. I run Teach the Teacher Author, and my focus is on helping teacherpreneurs grow their income, grow their impact through Instagram and social media marketing. So, yay. And if you are watching the replay, you can tap up here. There'll be a title, and you can follow both of us or check either of us out from there in the description. So we're going to get started with some people submitted questions ahead of time. But again, if you are watching live, feel free to drop your questions in, and we'll just get to them as we go. Emilee, first thing, how do you know if Pinterest is working for you?
That's a great question. So I think what's really hard when you first start on Pinterest, you the only place to go is up, right? So you might see your analytics and everything go up right away. I think what's really important, and I teach this in my course actually, is really before you even start, thinking about what your purpose is and what you want to accomplish with your Pinterest strategy. So I really walk through, and I do this with my clients too, even when I get on discovery calls, because it's important to think about, okay, what is the end objective? So I always relate it to teaching, kind of like reverse engineering, reverse planning. And so I talk about, are you really going for brand awareness? Are you building your email list? Obviously, most people are wanting TPT sales. So that's usually the number one thing. And so you have to think about, okay, if you want sales, especially with Pinterest, it's such a great search and discovery platform. And obviously, you might have built up a warm audience, but if you're just getting started, everybody's kind of cold to you. And so it's really important to think about that entire journey. And I really discuss with my clients, so you want TPT sales. So it seems like the natural thing is to just be sharing all these pins that are linked to TPT. However, the pins that are linked to TPT, a lot of times I don't always see those performing well. It's usually blog post pins or some type of free ideas or inspiration or really education. Those type of pins are ones that, and when I say that, they're linking back to that type of content. And so it's really that. Am I back now?
You're back. It like froze for a
Okay.
second. So you're talking about linking back to educational or inspirational content.
Yes, yes. And so I kind of talked to them about, okay, so if you want those sales, let's talk about the entire journey to getting to those sales. And so really, um, email list growth is a really great way to ultimately get those sales and those sales over time. And so when we're thinking about that, you can use UTM codes, and you want to have those specific metrics and things you can track, just like you said. So I do monthly reporting, and like you said, I'm tracking those important numbers and stats that we're able to see if Pinterest is, working, and not just like you log in and you see some of the, there's definitely some correlation between like having a lot of impressions and not having as many, but trying not to get, too carried away with some of the more vanity numbers, but really digging in and looking at what your purpose is and your objective, and then strategically tracking that, like I said, with using different UTM codes. And sometimes people, especially if you're just trying to drive that brand awareness, in that case, impressions might be more of an important number for you to be looking at. So just something to take into consideration, and kind of that process that I walk through with people when we're looking at, okay, how are we going to track if Pinterest is working? So yeah.
So you kind of have to think about what is your goal first, and then you can figure out if what you're doing is working. Because if you don't even know what you want to accomplish with Pinterest, how do you even start?
Exactly. Yeah. So like there's some numbers, and they all kind of work together, and they do have a purpose. And I've actually talked to my audience more about that lately, about even like followers, but there's some things that's like, okay, they might not make as much of a difference. And overall, if you have more followers, it does, end up meaning more eyeballs on your content that can play into, more saves. And so you kind of see that compound effect. But at the end of the day, followers on Pinterest aren't equating more TPT sales necessarily. Like I said, it all kind of works together, but really trying to focus on what your goal is and tracking that, and, not getting too worked up about some of the other numbers.
Are there
So,
categories that you were just like, you log into Pinterest, you're looking at the data for an account, and you just like don't even worry about what those numbers are saying?
um, honestly, not too much actually. I think some are more important than others, and I will say one that fluctuates quite a bit. A lot of times now you can see where like your impressions are down, but actually your outbound link clicks are up, which is really good, because that means that, okay, you might have not and the thing is, with an impression, that doesn't mean that anybody interacted or clicked on. It just means somebody literally scrolled past your pin. Yes. And so just for anybody that might not be aware exactly of what an impression means, and so that's not necessarily doing a whole lot, because they might have not even been paying attention, or even looking at it. So sometimes I find, and I think that people are really working on educating themselves more. I don't see this as much. When I started a couple of years ago, I felt like a lot of my clients were really obsessed with that impression number. And I will say that was one thing I'm like, okay, like that's not really bottom line, what's going to be paying your bills. So I will say, when I log in, that's one thing I'm like, okay, it fluctuates. It can fluctuate a decent amount. So that's one maybe I try not to worry about too much. But the other numbers, like you'll see like right away, like saves and some of those key things that do matter as far as engagement, and kind of all of that feeds into the Pinterest algorithm, and kind of like saying like, hey, this person's content is good, high quality, it's been saved a lot, so maybe we should show that to more people. So for the most part, how do you feel about Instagram? Are there certain stats, just out of curiosity, that you feel like you don't pay attention to, or do you kind of feel the same way? Sorry, I know
No,
it's not Pinterest, but
it's similar. Like as you're talking, I'm like, oh man, I see like just parallels happening. Like Reach talks about how many people saw your post like out in the netherworld there, but doesn't,
out in the wild.
yeah, like this many people encountered your content, but it doesn't say like they stopped and looked at it, or that they did something, or to me the like money metrics
Yeah.
site clicks, Because what is my goal, right? I want my Instagram followers probably to go to a store or to go to my email list or to go to my, whatever. So if you have a product post that's got like a billion likes, but no website clicks, something is happening on your customer journey that isn't quite resonating all the way through. Kind of like what you were talking about, how like they can see it, but if they're not doing the thing that you want them to do, it's not working for you.
Right, yeah. And I've seen pins that have had like, a lot of impressions, and sometimes they have like no, maybe like a couple of outbound link clicks and maybe a couple of saves, but it's just interesting that a lot of people can see it and it just might not resonate. So am I going a little wacky again?
No, my phone just like yelled at me for a second, but I think we're fine. But I got it. Like
Oh,
you're
okay.
talking about how like, they're really liking seeing that, but if they're not clicking on it, it's not doing the job.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's good though, because then that kind of tells us, hey, okay, like maybe we need a stronger call to action on this pen, or maybe we need to switch up the design. And so those things are helpful though, because I always say that, like, I mean, all data is good to look at, even if it doesn't make you happy, because it can, it can tell you where bottlenecks are and what's working and what's not working. So,
It's good to know. So how
yeah.
about say somebody's goal is to get people to their TPT store to get them to purchase something, and their data is showing like they're getting clicks from their UTM codes, but that product doesn't seem to be selling. What would you recommend?
So I think it's really important um, to not just think about what is really great content and what resource is really great. Because sometimes I'll have clients be like, "This is like a top seller," and um, sometimes they're like, "Okay, that makes total sense." And other times, honestly, I've had clients who are like, this one always does well and I don't, necessarily understand it. So I think it's important to, and especially with teaching as well, really play on seasonality too. And just because something at the end of the day might get you more profit, like if it's a bundle, you have to think about like, okay, but does it make sense? And this is kind of going away from organic, but I really like promoted pins for the fact that it's a really quick way to see, like, is this working? Is this converting? And you can see, like, okay, like a bundle doesn't always do as well in March. The people are winding down for the year, and even if they could use it for the next school year, sometimes things happen. You might be switched as far as grade levels. So really thinking about putting the pinner first and kind of putting like what might be a new resource or something you're excited about, or it's really great content, and really thinking about the pinner and how you can best be serving them. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. I will say it does get a little bit tricky tracking some things with the UTM codes, because people, the caveat where people can wish list something. And so then, you kind of lose some of that tracking on Pinterest. And so I will say that's probably, especially with really working mainly with TPT sellers, that's probably not just my biggest pain point, but theirs as well. So that makes it a little bit tricky with tracking. So hopefully that kind of answers that question.
Yeah, that's kind of something, one of those things that I have always felt with my own Pinterest strategy is like sometimes I just put my head down and trust that Pinterest is working. You might be like, what is she saying? Like, look at your data. And I'm like, no, because sometimes I'm pinning this thing and I've been pinning this thing and I can see that it's coming into my dashboard, but then like all of a sudden later it starts to sell and it's like something in there worked.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be like hard to pinpoint. And I will say, kind of like you're saying, I've seen this too, if I'm just being transparent, that you might, and once again, kind of going back to more promoted pins, and I do like it for that reason because it's a really quick like answer. Um, as far as, when you're getting people to actually see it, it's like, okay, they saw it and they might have even clicked, but they didn't end up buying. And it kind of gives you that understanding, like, okay, this was, the timing was right and everything, and it just, for whatever reason, didn't convert. And so I think sometimes then you have to reassess, okay, what else at this time of year could I be serving my, audience with that would be better for them. So it is tough though. And sometimes I don't feel like, people are like, I just don't understand why that didn't convert. And it can be tricky too. I think, especially with going directly to TPT, I think sometimes people just can't always decide if they're ready. And that's kind of going back to even with like promoted pins and organic. Yes, get them on your email list because they might buy later. And so it's all about nurturing them, which, yeah, you know how that goes. So,
And in case somebody is watching and they're like not sure what you're talking about with cold versus warm audience, a warm person knows you versus a cold person is somebody who's maybe never interacted with your brand before at all, didn't know you existed. So that difference between like somebody who knows you and is maybe more willing to click on your stuff or see what you have to say, or maybe they already like read everything that you write and they follow you everywhere and they're like, yes, I love this person, give me more. There's
yeah.
a big difference in those customers. So nurturing versus just like throwing stuff in their face and hoping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just buy this. I love it.
So let's talk about a little bit about repurposing between Instagram and Pinterest, because I love Instagram and obviously Pinterest is your jam. So and same
Yes.
time. So how can we repurpose things from one place to the other, and what is maybe good practice or not good practice? I've talked before about repurposing your Instagram reels to be I think Pinterest is calling them story pins now.
So they actually changed the name to Idea Pins, and this was like, I want to say it's actually, I think it's already been like 3 weeks ago. I know, but and it's so hard too because I still like want to call them story pins. They've made so many changes in the past year. That's another thing that sometimes people come to me because it's not that they don't like Pinterest, but they're like, I just don't want to keep up with it. So.
That's
But
interesting.
okay, so back to your question though, repurposing content. So I have such a great example. So one of my clients, she puts a lot of effort in her Instagram strategy, and she has a great presence, and she serves her audience so well, and that is like her jam. She has no interest in having a blog. She doesn't use YouTube. Like that is her place, and she has her other courses and then her lead magnets and stuff, and then really her post, it's basically and I've heard other people say this, and Ashley, you would know more about this, but that kind of people are, I don't know if microblogging, but they're really serving their audience on Instagram and finding that they don't necessarily like have to have that blog. I will say one thing that makes it a little bit challenging with Pinterest is it's kind of going, so if you're sending traffic from Pinterest to Instagram, it's kind of sending people from a top of funnel to kind of like a top of funnel. Whereas I like to go, like if they're interacting with you on Pinterest, to get them to like your website or something that you have more ownership of. However, like this client, going back to her, she is nurturing so much on Instagram. So, and I've told her, I'm like, it's a little bit more of a test because I really encourage people to have a blog, because I've also worked with people who just had their TPT store. And if I'm being honest, it's much more of a struggle. And you can even nurture people and offer free value and content on TPT because, you can have your free resources and direct pins to that, those freebies there as well. However, it's just different than having that ownership of your own website. So right now what we're doing, we are just we're sending her traffic to a mixture of her Instagram content, and we're using that as like the really like 80% of serving her audience, and then the 20% we're really sending them to like lead magnets. And so with that 80% of serving them, what I'm doing is like I'll go to her Instagram and I'll like read over the content, and sometimes I honestly like I might use some stock photos, or like I'll take photos that we've shared like in a Google Drive, and I'll download them. And then Pinterest, it's 1,000 by 1,500, so it's 2 by 3, and I just kind of resize them and stuff. I will say one tip: when you share directly from Instagram, you are not optimizing the title the size, and the description. So one big no-no is if you are going to be sending traffic to Instagram, make sure that your title and your description are optimized for the search engine. So if for people who aren't as familiar with that, because Pinterest isn't really social media, it is a search engine, there's aspects about it that are social, like that you can react to certain pins and stuff. It kind of makes it feel like that, but it's really not. It's more of like an introvert's platform where you're not necessarily like going to learn about somebody, like you want people to serve you, you know? So, I hear my daughter. I think her show's over. But anyways, so we're kind of repurposing in that way. One thing with the reels, I think it depends on, okay, Gigi, 1 second. It depends on what type of reel it is. I'm seeing that a lot, but I've even been repurposing some reels because you have on Pinterest static pins, idea pins, video pins, and it's really good to diversify. So what you can do is you can download that video from your Instagram, and then like I'll upload it to Canva, and then you can put text overlay and give it like a title. And once again, you're kind of thinking about like, okay, how can I optimize this for the search engine? I might have to, sorry, I hope I'm not going to make anybody motion sickness right now. I might have to meet the demands of my toddler.
So does that kind of give you, sometimes I'm like, hopefully this isn't like too overwhelming, but like an idea of some of the most important things as far as like repurposing that content from Instagram? Oh, and the link you can go to, if you are doing this on Pinterest, you can go to the link for that specific post, so that when people go, they're like, okay, I actually want to like read more about this information. They're going to that specific post and not just your Instagram feed. So that's another like big thing to think about, because I think one of the biggest pain points people have on Pinterest is not clicking and getting what they want. It's like a tease. You're like, oh.
Or you click on something and then it's like part of some other website where you're like, there's 60 posts and one of them was the thing that you thought you were getting, and that's just super annoying, which would be the same thing if you went to whole feeds. What about, so when we're talking about repurposing reels, because that's something that I went through and I did all of my reels that were like educational or tied to like a blog post or to a product. I've been using those as story idea pins.
Yeah.
But I haven't used any of my reels that are like funny, entertaining posts. Would those be something that would be good to use on Pinterest, or not so much because it's not a social platform?
I would say not so much. I just think that people, you know, they're coming to Pinterest a lot of times to learn something, or they have a problem and they need a solution. So some of those things that are really fun and engaging, where like, I'm not gonna lie, I go down a real rabbit hole all the time. And I'm like, I think they're so funny, and I can appreciate some reels that are totally not educational. They're just engaging to watch. But Pinterest is just so different. I've actually done a couple of those for different clients, and I knew, like we had talked about, like, okay, this was really engaging and did really well on Instagram. Like, let's see what happens. And they might have, even if it was like, and am I back?
Yes, you're.
Sorry, that was another notification on my phone. Where I might have like a funny video, and then in the description, or excuse me, the caption on Instagram, it might actually be kind of educational. But the thing is, like with the video, there's kind of a disconnect. So I really don't see that performing very well on Pinterest. So I try to stay away from those. Some of them where you're like numbering things, like 3 tips, and then you might even be like pointing. Some of those I've seen do a bit better. So
Yeah, I've used some of those that are basically I took a blog post and then turned it into a reel, and then I turned it into an idea pin that linked back to that first blog post, and like that whole thing worked really well for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. So that's perfect content repurposing. I love it.
Harder and not have to do things 19,000 times, right?
Right? Yes, definitely.
All right, so we just have one more question from our like submissions, and the big one was basically like, and I don't know if you can answer this, but we're going to see, was why did Pinterest get rid of the little keyword bubbles? So, you know, you used to be able to type in your things and then it would suggest keywords. Why did they get rid of them? And like, what could I do instead to find good keywords to search to like create my descriptions for Pinterest?
Oh, that is such a good question. And believe me, working with my clients, especially because I always, for my clients, am doing, especially when I am like going through the onboarding process, that's just something I do is keyword research. And so, especially like if I'm doing an account startup, like we do a deep dive because we're having to create boards and everything. And so, it's such a helpful tool. If I'm being honest, I don't know why they got rid of that feature. However, one thing you can do, so I'm going to give like something that's in my head because this is my brain with working with teachers, but like, so one of my clients really serves her audience specifically. She focuses on guided reading. And so like if you were to go and start typing in guided reading in the search bar at the top, Pinterest will just start formulating long tail keywords. And so guided reading, that's really what we call a pillar keyword. And so it's less words. Long tail is more like 2 to 5, usually 2 to 4 words. So guided reading small groups, that would be a long tail keyword. So that'll start forming for you. And so that'll give you a lot of ideas. And then one thing I like to do, so like if I see guided reading table, I might click on that. And then when I'm looking in that feed, I look at the text overlay, I look at titles, descriptions. It might show me other keywords that I hadn't thought of, but there's also, there's like little boxes that come up. So you're scrolling, and they're related terms. And so it kind of gives you ideas for other things because it might even be different than like what's showing up when you're entering it in the search bar, if that makes sense. Now, I used to have a hack that was super helpful. So I don't know if, am I good? Okay. So to wrap this up
I'm
though,
sorry.
oh no, you're fine. So in that search bar though, you used to be able, so you can actually like filter like whatever term you're searching. Do you want it to search people? Do you want it to search like video pins? And so if you would hit video, it would bring the bubbles back, and it was kind of a hack. So I know, I was like, I loved it, and I was doing that for a little while, and I'm not seeing that anymore either. So a couple of those tips just to like recap: use the search bar. You'll see the boxes of like related searches that you might be interested in, and then also click on some of the stuff that's coming up that Pinterest is kind of telling you might be a long tail keyword. And then also when you go to some of those searches, look at text overlay descriptions and see if you can kind of get ideas. And then when you go back up to the search bar, you can start typing in a new idea you have. And depending on how many words come up, it kind of tells you how many searches are being done, if that makes sense. Or if it's something that, if it has like a lot of like related long tail keywords, it's probably a really solid pillar keyword. Does that make sense?
That's because if you start typing in and like nothing is coming, you're like, okay, no one's looking.
Yeah, so you kind of, you don't really have like a lot of latitude in that way. So yeah, that's one that, oh, okay, that's probably not a solid keyword to go with. So
So, okay, so those were all of our submitted questions, and I've been trying to keep an eye on the comments, and I don't think I saw any come in. If I missed you when you commented, feel free to throw it in right now. Emilee, I saw you just posted about a masterclass. Did you want to tell us a little bit about that as we're wrapping up?
yes, thanks so much, Ashley. So I did just post, and I saw you're so sweet. You comment, I'm like, I'm kind of nervous because it's my first one. But so I am launching a course, and to kind of kick off the launch of this course, I am doing a live training over my 3-step system for automated TPT sales. And so, yes, super exciting. And so that live webinar will be next Thursday. That's June 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So that means bedtime for my girls. And so, yeah, and you can join or register, I should say, for that webinar training. There's a link in my bio. So I'm super excited about that. So
Wonderful. And just in
yeah.
case anybody missed it, I am also, well, not not the same thing, not a masterclass, not a free course, not, I don't have anything like that going on. We're doing a Rejuvenate Your Instagram challenge, and it starts on the 13th. So we're going to be doing little, I don't want to say baby steps, but little manageable chunks of things you can do to kind of refresh your Instagram over next week. So if you want to check that out, I have information in my bio about that. So
And I think I need to do that.
thanks for posting, and people keep being like, are you calling me out? And I was like, I did not say any names.
There was something that you did have a post, and I was like, oh, I think she's talking to me. No, that's so good though. I love it.
I'm here at this. I know what you need, so I'm really excited about that. But
Oh, that's
all right.
awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah.
A ton of great information. I'm like gonna go back and take notes and like put it all in the caption and like summarize chunks, so so people can watch the replay and learn from you. So
Yay.
thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Ashley, for having me. All right, talk soon.